Hi, everybody. Welcome this morning to Envision Utah's annual Quality Communities Academy. We're excited to have you. I know more people are continuing to join us. This is an event we do every year in light of the rapid growth we're seeing in Utah. You're probably aware that the census showed we're the fastest growing state for the last 10 years. And at Envision Utah, we do a lot of visioning exercises with different communities, and without fail, the scenario that has mixed use centers in it is by far the most popular among the public. And so that's why today we've picked the topic of mixed use centers as our primary topic. I'm going to share my screen here, see if this works. So first of all, I want to thank our sponsors today, FFKR and Rocky Mountain Power. Thank you very much for making this possible. And also, as always, we need to thank the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation for their generous matching grant that makes all that we do at Envision Utah possible. Just a little run of show here as we get started. So first, we're going to hear from Laura Hansen, who is the state planning coordinator at the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, who's going to talk a little bit about our state growth. And then Ryan Beck and Michaela Respicio Evans, who are on our staff here at Envision Utah, are going to talk a bit about the new Creating Communities guide that we are releasing at Envision Utah. And then we're going to break out into one of 3 sessions that you can choose from. The first will be about myths and public engagement, and that will be led by Nicole Bordeaux at UTA and Ted Knowlton at the Wasatch Front Regional Council. The other option you have is to talk about centers in different settings. So we'll have Mayor Holly Daines talking about Logan, Mayor Lenise Peterman talking about Helper, and then Ty McCutcheon talking about Daybreak. And then your third option will be talking about implementation first steps. So you've decided you want a mixed use center. How do you get started? And there we'll have Francis Lilly at Mill Creek and Paul Allred, who recently retired from Holiday. So with that, I will pass the torch here to Laura Hansen.
Thank you, Ari. Let me just get my slides here on the screen. All right. As Ari mentioned, my name is Laura Hansen. I am the new state planning coordinator in the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and I'm really happy to be here talking about this important topic today. As Ari mentioned, Utah is growing. I know you feel it. Our population grew by 18.4% over the last decade, which made us the fastest growing state in the nation. We rank #1 in the nation for GDP growth, and we have a 2.6 unemployment rate. And St. George came in 3rd place for growth among all metro areas across the entire nation, according to the recent census data. We're urbanizing as well. 91% of our population lives in an urban setting, and the urbanized portions of our state are expanding. So we're seeing a lot of growth in the southern and western parts of Utah County, in the Wasatch Back, in the greater St. George area. And we're diversifying. Since 2010, nearly 40% of our statewide population is attributable to increases in racial and ethnic minorities. As we diversify as a state, we're going to have diversifying needs for both transportation and housing and employment and all of those things. We're growing. We've been, a big fan of growth in our state for a long time, but Utahns are starting to grow a little bit wary of that growth. We're feeling more traffic congestion. We're worried about air quality. We're worried about crowding, affordable housing, finding a campsite where you can get away or on a trail away from people. And so how we grow is paramount to our future sustainability and maintaining the quality of life that Utah loves. Center-based development is such an important topic. It provides us a really useful tool to manage the negative aspects of growth while still accommodating new residents and new businesses and things to come to Utah. Centers allow for affordability, life cycle housing, and choice. It really preserves the way that we can have our single family neighborhoods as well as denser options within these centers. Centers will reduce vehicle miles traveled. It'll make our state more walkable, more bikeable, easier to serve with transit. And at the same time, it makes it easier to drive a car because we have more and more people using these other methods. Centers will help us manage our resources better. It'll be a more efficient use of water, our utilities, our services, and help preserve our air quality. Envision Utah has been and continues to be such a leader in helping Utahns articulate a future vision for our communities. We really appreciate Envision Utah gathering us here today, providing this great forum for a discussion about how to preserve and enhance our communities as Utah continues to grow. So I want to tell you a little bit about the state's.
Hey Laura, I
yes.
hate to interrupt, but I have not been seeing your slides advance. So.
Well, here's my first one. That was
okay. It was on purpose then. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
So I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening here in the state. So just hours after Governor Cox's election victory last November, he started to mobilize a massive team of volunteer experts, including Envision Utah's very own Ari Bruning, to help with this transition of power. The team looked at the function and customer service and statute of every single state agency and did deep dives into a number of policy areas. You see here, rural matters, equality and opportunity, economic advancement, and streamlining government. And here's why. The governor's vision is something we call Utah's dream. His dream is to have a state where residents are happy, safe, healthy, successful, and a place where we can grow old, surrounded by the people we love, and live in one of the most beautiful states in America together as one Utah. We believe that everyone's invited. We build on a Utah formula that works, including free enterprise, hard work, strong families, limited government, big-hearted communities, compassion for those in need, fiscal responsibility, service is at our core, and we listen and show empathy. And this vision is outlined in the administration's One Utah Roadmap. As we build housing, workforces, schools, businesses, and communities, we need these successes that lift us all to help us preserve our quality of life and expand this Utah dream to everyone. We're really grateful for Envision Utah's partnership as we seek these quality communities, and the state's excited and happy to help serve our various communities and be good partners. So with this transition, the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget has been renamed back to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and this name change was really intentional. And it was a recommendation of the transition teams. So we've organized into 4 different pillars, adding back planning and coordination, which is my role here at the state. Some of the new functions for this office were maintained, and some of the things we're adding that are new. So one of my main focuses is really helping to coordinate planning efforts across the various different state agencies within state government, across our geographic regions, and then spanning all levels of government and engagement. And so some of the projects that we're doing include helping agencies develop strategic plans to align their work and make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. We're working on a coordinated water action plan. We started with 200 plus recommendations of various different things that we could do to advance our water future, and tying that the way that we grow and our water use to land use planning is a critical component of that. And so we're working to prioritize that, develop some specific strategies, and work towards some executive orders and actions that the state can take to advance our water security. And we're also managing a local government assistance matching grant program. We have $50 million in COVID relief funding that local governments can apply to right now to assist with affordable housing, public health, water and sewer infrastructures, and other allowable uses. And we really hope that a lot of these funds will go towards helping build centers and expand those opportunities within our state. And so with that, I am just going to thank Ari again and Envision Utah for bringing us here together to talk about this. And I really look forward to the breakout sessions and learning about this new Quality Communities toolkit. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So I just want to say thank you again for attending and welcome. I'm going to get my slides up. So my name is Michaela Respicio. I'm a planning project manager here with Envision Utah. I just want to start off by saying thank you to the many sponsors over the years that have made the Creating Communities Guide possible. The guide began as a project of several years ago, and we've involved many stakeholders and experts to get us here to this point. We're really excited today to be launching that resource. So over the next half hour or so, Ryan and I will be providing an overview of the guide and how to use it. We'll be sending everyone who registered for this event a full digital copy of the guide following today's event. And we hope that it'll be a very useful resource to you all. We'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation regarding the guide. So to start, this guide is a resource and a starting point for city staff, officials, planners, and the general public. It's for anyone who may not know what centers are or are figuring out their first steps in incorporating center development into their community. The guide provides introductory information and connects readers to other resources to continue their implementation journey. The big message here is that centers are a powerful strategy for accommodating our growth while maintaining our high quality life for decades to come. So the guide is organized into 6 chapters. The first provides an introduction to the concept of centers and how they fit into Utah's past and future. The next 2 chapters discuss some of the key land use and transportation components that go into a center. Then the guide will cover regional benefits and considerations for planning and implementing a center. And then the last chapter highlights the stories of centers around Utah. So on to chapter 1, Intro to Centers. This chapter touches on just the quick facts. As we've already mentioned, and a lot of us know, Utah's growing at an extremely rapid rate and there's no slowing down in our future. As we look at this growth, it brings a number of questions to mind. Where will these people live and work? How will they travel? How do we keep our air clean? Centers are a land use and transportation strategy for developing pockets of dense development that is well connected to other areas by robust transportation infrastructure. Centers provide a variety of services and amenities which serve the local community and promote economic development. There are many qualities that can be captured in a center, but all centers share 3 fundamental components. First, they are mixed use. Second, they have access to regional transportation. And third, they are designed to be walkable. And the guide goes into depth in these 3 qualities a little later. Centers come in different scales. These are neighborhood, city, urban, and metropolitan. Thank you to WFRC for these classifications. So a neighborhood center would fit really nicely into a suburban or highly residential area. This is like your 15th and 15th neighborhood in Salt Lake City. And then on the other hand, our only current metro center is downtown Salt Lake City. Although we have a couple emerging centers that could definitely be metros one day. Centers are most beneficial when they're connected as part of a network throughout the region. Centers work by bringing our homes and destinations closer together and providing the infrastructure to walk, bike, drive, or ride public transportation between them. Various scales of centers should be distributed throughout the valley to balance accessibility and local identity with economic viability. And although this may sound like a super radical idea in the face of recent growth, centers have been a part of Utah's history for as long as LDS pioneers have been in the valley. Settlements were often built with a common main street where everything could be accessed by foot. And in many cities and towns throughout Utah, you can still find many of these historic and walkable main streets. The last thing this chapter touches on is the role of centers in our future. Wasatch Choice was a collaborative effort among the cities along the Wasatch Front, and that visioning effort sees centers as part of the growth strategy for the next few decades. The Your Utah, Your Future effort engaged over 50,000 Utahns statewide, and people overwhelmingly voted to see more communities designed for walking, transit, short drives, and housing variety. A network of centers was found to be a cross-cutting strategy to address challenges in water, air quality, housing, economy, and more. The next chapter discusses key land use components. And first, as I mentioned before, is that centers are mixed use. They take housing, retail, office space, public space, and civic uses and put them in close proximity. This can be vertical mixed use like retail on the bottom floor of apartments, or it can be horizontal with many uses accessible nearby by walking without needing to cross a major road. Centers can be distinguished from places like office parks and strip malls by their mix of uses. And from this list that I mentioned, arguably housing is the most important component of a center. Residents who live in the center can easily access the destinations that are there, which saves on cost of living. And centers also provide the opportunity to add townhomes, condos, and apartments in a way that makes sense in an area, and it'll improve affordability. Planners looking to incorporate mixed use should allow for flexibility in zoning or utilize form-based code, which allows for multiple uses as long as it fits certain design requirements. This can promote a sense of place and cohesion throughout the development, regardless of what the use ultimately is. The next component of a good center is usable public space, and this is more than park strips or wide expanses of lawn. The goal here is really to develop welcoming outdoor spaces that can be utilized by those who live in the center and nearby. Any open or public space should be within walking distance of other uses, and it should have features that make it usable and approachable for visitors. This could be walking paths, sitting areas, tables, decor, or shaded areas. In the image that we've highlighted here, this is the orchard at University Place in Orem. It's a large park that's lined by shopping, and it also features entertainment space, which is used for events year-round. Another strategy that successful centers employ is reimagining how visitors interact with the space. COVID, as many of us have seen, has accelerated trends of shopping, shifting away from brick and mortar toward online. So many stores have shifted toward curbside pickup model, which raises the question of how we reimagine our spaces to be more attractive. How do we get people to come to these places? And successful centers like Holiday Village and downtown Salt Lake City incorporate event space for concerts, festivals, markets, which brings in a variety of people on a very regular basis. Holiday even incorporated a food truck park, which is now a beloved gathering space. And these flexible spaces for events are a valuable way to meet the needs of the local community. Speaking of which, a really important component of centers is being able to incorporate qualities of the nearby area. The best centers are unique to the locality and blend into the fabric of the surrounding community. For example, this pedestrian bridge in Park City is used in the summer to help people and cyclists cross over a highway. And then in the winter, it acknowledges the strong skiing community in the area by providing access to the town directly off the slopes. And you can see that in this image right here. And here's that same bridge. So it's these small components that help cultivate a really strong sense of place and a sense of ownership among those who use the center. Art is another really great way to incorporate this element. So that chapter focused on land use and design elements. Chapter 3 really focuses on the transportation components. The first is regional transportation connections. Centers should be along high capacity transportation infrastructure. Larger centers like urban or metro centers should be near frontrunner stops, tracks or BRT stops, or freeway exits. This ensures that a center is easy to access and doesn't contribute to local traffic. These larger transportation connections should, however, not interfere with the walkability of the center. So plan to buffer areas of high pedestrian traffic away from these major roads. Additionally, consider using traffic calming strategies to indicate to drivers a transition to slower speeds. This can include larger medians, extended curbs, traffic circles, or on-street parking. Street connectivity is our second major component. A street grid is the most connected form, and that's shown on the left. Compared to the right, this Utah suburb has many looped streets and cul-de-sacs. Connected streets provide safe and direct routes that distribute traffic and decrease travel time. A disconnected street system forces traffic onto arterials and creates barriers to active transportation. If you can't fully connect streets, consider adding a pedestrian or bike connection to promote active transportation. Downtown Salt Lake has a really strong grid system, but the blocks are massive. So they're exploring mid-block connections like Regent Street to improve walkability. WFRC, MAG, and other partner agencies created an amazing resource on this topic called the Utah Street Connectivity Guide. So be sure to check that out. The next component is walkable design. Centers should be planned to the human scale so people feel comfortable exploring and lingering. And this ultimately contributes to the vitality of the space. This can be achieved by using eye-level signs, placing buildings closer to the street, having your store entrances open up to the sidewalk rather than a parking lot, marking clear and wide pathways, placing street furniture, and supporting glass window displays. Next, complete streets refer to roads that more equitably reflect the needs of cars as well as pedestrians, cyclists, and public transportation. So a complete street can include wide sidewalks and park strips, on-street parking, transit lanes, wide medians, and bike lanes. Thoughtful parking is arguably the most challenging, the biggest challenge that centers must conquer. The last few slides have hopefully impressed on you all the importance of walkability in the pedestrian experience. Parking creates dead zones in otherwise lively areas and can be a barrier to an enjoyable walking experience. Convenience for cars must be balanced with walkable design. Studies have shown that parking recommendations by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or the ITE, severely overestimate the parking needs in centers and other transit-oriented developments. Trends like rideshare services and curbside pickup are further reducing parking needs in retail and commercial areas. Parking must be carefully incorporated in a way that heightens overall connectivity, convenience, and walkability. This guide highlights 5 strategies for handling parking in centers. The first is to centralize parking in a structure or underground. Second, utilize shared parking reservoirs so spaces can serve many uses throughout the day. Third, provide on-street parking, which helps with walkability by buffering traffic. Fourth, locate surface parking lots behind buildings so entrances open up to the sidewalk. And lastly, include pedestrian navigation and service parking lots or parking structures to help connect people to their destinations. Well, thank you for your attention. I will now turn the time over to Ryan to finish our overview of the guide.
All right, Michaela, thank you. Let me just get my slides up on the screen here. And okay, I think I'm in a good place now. All right, Michaela, well, thank you again. Hopefully I can finish as strong as you started on this creating community guide. So my name is Ryan Beck. I am the Vice President of Planning here at Envision Utah. And I'm going to jump in right here with regional benefits and talk about some of these benefits that are incredibly important to not only the Wasatch Front, but the state as well. So if you think about a center, one city center in a community, it has great benefits, and it's really adds to the sense of place for a city or a community. But think about if we build a network or an entire region or entire state of these centers, what it really does is it really sets the state up, to Laura's point, to be it positions the state or the Wasatch Front to be really successful, to deal with all the growth that's coming. So, this allowing Utahns to have convenient access to employment, to education, to housing, to healthcare, to groceries. It's just so important to the future, our shared future. So, the urban footprint. So Cody, who's in our office, did some modeling about in Utah County. So countywide, if we continue to build as we have for the last 20 years, you can see that we're going to consume about 91,000 acres. If we build in a center style development pattern, you can see that we save about 40,000 acres. Now, I know a lot of people, I hear a lot of talk about open space, how important that is. I hear a lot of people talk about agriculture, what we can, those miles, that 40,000 acres is just, if those components are important to you, the size of our development footprint, our urban footprint, our development footprint is just incredibly important. There's also benefits, we save miles of roads, miles of sewer, miles of pipes, all the utilities, which eventually gets passed on to the community in the form of taxes. So very important component. So we also know we have a housing crisis in this state. I think the latest numbers from the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute put us at about 44,000 housing units short. In the last few years, we have, since 2013, we have shifted to more multifamily units. Traditionally back, in the early 2000s, we were building about 70% single family. We've shifted in the recent years. We're about 50-50 and maybe a little bit heavier on the multifamily side, but there is still so much work to be done to provide, housing units in close proximity to jobs. And I feel like a center, housing in a center, maybe a little bit higher density housing is the perfect opportunity, for more townhomes, more apartments and condos, maybe more twin homes, just a little bit higher density. As Ted Milton always says at WFRC, location matters. And I think these centers are just a great place for a little bit more housing. So I also want to talk about transportation and access to opportunity. We as the planners, as a planning industry, as elected officials, this is where we can make a real difference in having inclusive communities, convenient transportation options so people can get to jobs, so people can get to an education. It's this accessibility and this opportunity for Utahns is just of utmost importance, to really position Utah to be a desirable place to live. We also hear a lot about air quality. It's on the tip of everyone's mind, especially over the last summer. So recently, a lot of the air pollution has come from wildfires. However, we still are seeing about 40%, annually, 40% of our air pollution comes from the vehicles we drive, primarily our single family or our single occupant automobiles. So these centers, what they really do is they can make the trip shorter, reduce vehicle trips, and in a lot of cases, help us walk or bike more places rather than jump in the car and completely eliminate that vehicle trip, which is a direct benefit to our air quality. So this, building in a center style development pattern also saves local governments, a lot of money. Some modeling that the Wasatch Front Regional Council did say, approximately would save local governments approximately $2 billion, that's with a B, $2 billion to follow the center style growth pattern. So that, that primarily comes from less infrastructure, roads, pipes, sewer, that, increasingly are getting very expensive. And maybe a benefit that's a little bit more intangible, maybe harder to quantify, is this sense of place and this sense of community. This cultivating this sense of safety, encouraging social interaction, things that are really important to our communities. These centers really help curate and with those places. So I'm going to jump into the chapter 5, which is planning a center. Just checking my time. So, this is really about embracing the process, about cities, municipalities embracing the process. This needs to be their own process. And I really feel like, these centers need to be, incorporated with maybe a vision for what their city could be, that naturally would follow that their general plan, that the center is reflected in their general plan, and identify places in the community that where a center could go. I know the Wasatch Choice for 2050, that's been part of their process. I think it's been very successful. But these centers, as Michaela mentioned, should be unique to the local community, and they really need to call it their own. So we know that our markets are changing, our retail markets, for example. We know with the upswing in online, with more people buying things on the internet, our retail spaces, we don't need to have as much retail space as we did even just 10 years ago. And I feel like this is a perfect place to incorporate housing. I mentioned the 44,000 housing units short. We really need to start working towards getting that number down so that housing can become more affordable for all of us. So I've got an example here of Fairborn Station in West Valley City. Back in the early 2000s, you could see it was the mall there was dying a little bit. You can see on that top picture that the typical high parking requirements. What they've gone and done is created a center. They've specifically to the mall. They've filled in some of that parking lot with spaces. I think those are restaurants that you see highlighted in the red, on the lower red, with restaurants and other places to meet market demand. They've also gone ahead and invested heavily in their city center to create this center. The transit's there, the walkability's there, but they've also done things like adopt flexible zoning to really act as a catalyst to their center. I'm not going to go too much in detail here because Paul Allred, will be in one of the breakout sessions, but this is an excellent example of how we can reimagine our downtowns. And this could be, in Beaver, in Fillmore, and in any completely off the Wasatch Front, but just, creating this sense of place. There's a before and after picture here, which really highlight what Holiday City has done. I also want to just touch on for a moment new technologies in planning for this evolution in our development. Things are changing rapidly. Who would have thought, pre-COVID that so many of us would be working from home, or, think about ride shares or, ride sharing, or think about things like autonomous vehicles. It is almost impossible to predict where, what the future holds and where we will be going, but we should be thinking about adaptive land uses and, because building a center can take years and years and years. And so that flexibility to change is of utmost importance, keeping that in mind. I also want to just touch on the affordability of our housing, right? So the essential workers, nursing assistants, preschool teachers, firefighters, paramedics, people we need to make our society function, people we really need, they have been priced out of the housing market. You can see some of their average annual incomes on the lower part of the screen. But what we really need to be doing is in these centers is be building more housing that can help serve the needs of some of these average incomes. So it's a tough sell because we know that centers are highly desirable. We also know that new construction is typically more expensive, but the bottom line is we need, basic economics tells us that we need more units. Back to the 44,000 units we are short right now. We're not going to hit some of our affordability benchmarks until we get just more units. So I feel like centers is an excellent place for more townhomes, more apartments, more condos. But I think as a city develops a center, I think you need to keep this affordability in mind right from the get-go. And, there are housing authorities, the Utah Housing Corporation, for example, that helps with, some of the management work, some of the administrative work, because it's a heavy lift for cities. But all in an effort to keep the project more viable, to keep the units affordable. So I am going to just touch on myths. I'm checking my time. I'm just going to touch on myths for a quick moment. That is included in the guide. But we have searched at Envision Utah high and low to try to quantify, to try to back up some of these myths or debunk them. And the reality is we're not finding a lot of data that leads us to believe things like crime. That's a common fear that high density development may increase crime. We're not finding any data to back that up. So, traffic and crowding, I think the point there is, yes, maybe locally a center may locally create more traffic, but regionally, it does great things for the traffic. So just, as you're going out and you're doing your public engagement, you're going to get hit with some of these arguments, some of these myths. Just be ready that they will happen, but there's not necessarily a lot of data to back them up. It's mostly fear-based. So I also want to just briefly touch on messaging here. Just as this presentation started with Ari and Laura and Michaela, we all hit this. We have some growth realities that we need to deal with in this state. Otherwise, we are not going to be in a good position in the next, 20, 10, 20, 30 years. We have some growth realities. And these, this is people moving in because we have a strong economy. Strong economy is a good thing. This is because we're having kids and grandkids. And, I think we will continue to do that. We have a high birth rate. So we need to emphasize that there's some realities we need to deal with. We can't hide our head in the sand, but we also need to speak to, what's important to people, their values. You noticed on a previous slide, I talked about the firefighters and the school teachers and their pay scale. What I'm trying to get to is the values and try to strike a chord there. But there, we can also talk about the fiscal benefits of a center, and maybe some people, what's important to them is lower taxes. But what we really need to do is create the support for these centers with genuine public outreach. So I am going to briefly touch on some scales and examples. Just a few years ago, it was harder to find great examples of centers in Utah, but we have been lucky. That we have a lot of great centers and a lot of great examples to point to. Before I jump into the actual examples, I just want to mention that in this guide you will find that we have a classification of centers, and this is exactly what you will find in the Wasatch Choice for 2050. We've used the same terminology, the same scales, but what we've tried to do is suggest what the catchment areas might be. The number of rooftops or the population that would serve, and the suggested floor area ratios and densities. So that is in the guide. Hopefully you find it useful, but I think I will end here with just a couple of great examples of, well, in this case, neighborhood centers. This is a picture of Soda Row in Daybreak, and then we've got the 15th and 15th, great neighborhood centers. We have city centers. There's great examples, whether that's down south in St. George or Mayor Danes in downtown Logan. They're doing great things. And of course, we have some urban centers, whether that's Provo, West Valley City. We have some, and then metro centers. We probably only at this point have, downtown Salt Lake is probably our only true metro center, but Provo might be up and coming. Ogden may be up and coming. Vineyard, I've seen big plans there. So we have great examples of centers to look to, case studies, and keep in mind, we also have a lot of emerging centers that whether that's Heber City, whether that's Layton, Sandy, the Cairns District, great examples there. So with that, I think Michaela and I are going to attempt to answer any questions that the audience might have. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat window. All right. Let me get in here. So I'm just looking through some of the comments. This is a comment from Ted, that centers provide housing choices that meet the housing demand in locations that benefit from lower transportation expenses. I think, Ted, that's a great point. I would, when I think about centers, I think about how great would it be if a typical Utah household, which has 2 cars, could drop one of those cars and go to 1 car. How great would that be? Think how much of the monthly budget a typical household spends on, the car payment, the gas, the maintenance, the whole thing. It's very, very expensive. So.
Yeah,
Right.
just to answer one of the questions, so the full guide, we just went over that in the last 25 minutes, but it's a full 60-page document that we're planning on sending out after this directly to you all. And then we'll also be posting it on our website so you can read more about everything that we've touched on.
And let's see, Michaela, do you see any? I see a lot of comments. I'm just scrolling through. So what, Michaela, do you see? I'm scrolling through. I see a lot of comments. I'm not necessarily seeing any questions. I guess with that, I will mention that you should be automatically placed in a breakout room, but if you're not, but if you're not, we can, you can stick around. I can put you in a room. And also if you look to the bottom of your screen, there should be a hover over with the breakout room option where you can place yourself in. And if you remember, breakout room 1 is the myths in public engagement. That's with Nicole Bordeaux and Ted Knowlton. Breakout session 2 is the centers in different settings. That'll be with Mayor Holly Daines, Mayor Lenise Peterman, and then Ty McCutcheon. And then implementation, breakout room 3 is implementation first steps, which will be Francis Lilly with Mill Creek and then Paul Allred. And then also, if there's others that have questions, Michaela and I are going to stay behind in this room and do our best to where we can answer questions with that. And as Michaela mentioned early on, this guide, please watch for an email from us, from Envision Utah staff. We are, Michaela, Leota, Nate, all of Envision Utah staff has put a lot of time into this over the last year plus. We're excited about it. We hope you find it useful. Please take some time to go through it and hopefully you find it useful. All right, thank you for your time. You're going to the breakout rooms.